In this video, we will talk about personas, what they are, why we need them when we are developing new products and services, and how to create them. Persona is a fictional but realistic portrayal of a target user for your product. Persona is a representation of the goals, thoughts, frustrations, and behaviors the target user has. It gives you and your development team a person to connect with and someone to keep in mind when designing your product or service. Even though it is a fictional character, it is based on real research and helps you visualize different user types that might use your product, service in a similar way. Each persona represents an entire group or audience of users. Persona is usually visualized in one document. You will find numerous templates online ranging from very minimal persona to elaborate and complex personas. The simplest persona will have an image, ideally showing the person in the setting you are interested in. It will also have a made-up name. You might add demographic information based on factual data gathered as part of your user research. Quotes from real users also can help to paint a vivid picture of your target group. The last critical component for any persona is a basic information about why they are interested in your offer or why they are interesting to you. So here you could add what they are hoping to achieve with your solution or some specific behaviors before, during, or after the interaction with your product or service that might help you to shape your design decisions. More complex personas will also include lifestyle, interests, and hobbies if they apply to users' motivations. Keep the details that are relevant to your problem. No matter which template you choose, a persona description should feel like a description of a real person. It is not an artificial target group or an ideal target group that does not exist in the real world. It should feel so realistic that you would not be surprised if your persona would walk into the room. Now, when you have an idea of what a persona is, let's consider why and when you might need it. First, whether you are developing a new smartphone app, a new food delivery service, or a complex industrial machine, it's very important to understand who will be using your product. Creating personas will help you to understand your users' needs, experiences, behaviors, and goals. Well-defined personas will enable you to efficiently identify and communicate user needs and identify the problem statement that your future offer should solve. Building personas helps you to step out of yourself and recognize that different people have different needs and expectations. It also helps to prevent you from generalizing all users into one bucket and thinking that everyone has the same needs and goals. Personas make real users memorable for you and the development team and helps you to build empathy for the real user. When we keep referring to people we develop for as users or customers, this does not make these persons feel very real. We are not talking about real people. Real people have limited abilities. Real people don't necessarily get gadgets in the same way the development or design team does. Real people have needs that have been brought up by their circumstances or by their own personal beliefs. So we need to know a little bit more about them. And personas are a great way of representing these understandings. Interestingly, there is scientific evidence that our brains are wired to empathize with individuals rather than groups. We dehumanize people when we refer to them with these abstract collective nouns like users or customers. So instead of talking about customer group 1 or user community 2 or 3, we are talking about Bob, Lisa, Peter, or whatever you and your team agree to call them. Besides building empathy and making real users memorable, personas help the development team to make smart decisions. They are useful tools to refer to at any given point in your creation process, as knowing your audience influences the features and design elements you choose. Personas help you to ask the right questions during this creation process. For example, you could ask yourself, how would Lisa react to the feature? Or what would Peter do when presented with the situation? Besides that, personas are a great way to get everyone on the team on the same page regarding your users. Most designers and developers work in multidisciplinary teams, where it's important to communicate your findings from the user research stage. And personas encompass all the essential details about your users from everyone's research and provide a memorable way for everyone on the team to agree and understand for whom they are developing new products or services. So in essence, user personas are crucial if you want to design something that is useful, desirable, and valuable to your target audience. They are like your northern star, guiding your decisions from start to finish. Let's now look at how you can create personas. The first step in the process of developing a persona is research. You need to look into who your customers are and learn as much as you can about them and their habits. So customer research forms the base for your persona, be it an interview, ethnographic research, social media analysis, or any other market research tool. You can't learn much about user needs from behind the screen crunching numbers. You can, however, learn a lot when you start talking to humans. So the most common approach is to observe and interview your customers to learn about them and their needs. You learn a lot about your customers from just a phone call or a video call or an online chat, or in the best way, in-personal interview. Whatever format you choose for an interview, make sure that you take notes. Try to note exact words they use and identify commonalities and specific insights. You will probably start noticing themes after 3 to 5 interviews. You can also look at past conversations that you, sales or customer support teams have had and analyze and synthesize those to get a better understanding of who your customers specifically are and how you might describe them in detail. Here are a few other resources you can use to conduct research for understanding your customers better. Various website or app analytics can offer information for free. You can use your analytics as a starting point when creating a new persona, but make sure that you add depth to your persona, and for that you will still need to get out there and talk to your users. You can learn more about who is following you on social media, what they're talking about, how they are interacting with your brand, your product, your service, and other brands, products, and services. For a more interactive approach to gathering data, try sending out a survey to your current customers in your next email, or hold focus group sessions to interact with customers and potential customers directly and gain insights into who they are and how they feel about your product or service. Surveys can be a starting point to form hypotheses about different user groups. Alternatively, they can also be used to validate and adjust personas you have created based on your qualitative research. Once you have gathered enough research, it's time to analyze it. So you can start by coding your data, cross-checking different resources, and identifying patterns. After rigorous data analysis, persona groups will emerge. In smaller projects with smaller data sets, this process is sometimes simplified. After sharing everyone's data and insights in the team through summaries, post-its, or available online tools, you can form a general idea of the various users within the population you have studied and ways they differ from one another. So you can start by organizing this information into persona groups that represent your customers. These groups will then be consolidated into single user personas. Normally, you would want to create more than one persona for each product or service, so make sure that you agree within the team on the final number of personas. If you have several personas, it is always good to define the primary persona. This persona is going to be the main focus of your design efforts. A word of advice: remember to focus on the major needs of the most important user group. You can't be everything to everyone, so it is better to do one thing and do it well. So in other words, focus on one specific user group and one specific pain point. The next step is to describe the persona. Don't forget that the purpose of working with personas is to be able to develop solutions based upon the needs and goals of your users. So you have to make sure that your persona descriptions reflect this deep understanding and empathy for your users. Let's start with the header to the persona. This includes a fictional name, an image, and a quote that summarizes what matters most to your persona in relation to your potential offer. A quote from a real user within the target group that persona represents should be included. If during your research you did not come across a strong quote, make one up. Just imagine what this person would say, but make sure that it is typical for that person. Let us look at an example. Imagine you are designing a finance planning service for millennials. You have identified multiple persona groups and identified young, fashion-conscious shopaholics as your main target audience. The foundations of your persona might go something like this. Name, Valerie, Wagner. Valerie is a fashion-conscious shopaholic, and a typical quote that represents Valerie is, "Oh, I have to get that dress." Now we are going to add some factual details to the persona. You could add some personal background like age, gender, education, family status. You could also add professional background, including professional occupation, income level, and work experience if it is relevant for your project. You can also include some psychographic details. Creating a psychographic profile enables you to better understand why your user behaves in a certain way, including why they use your product. This is where you will also include details such as attitudes, interests, motivations. This type of information should be consistent among all personas you create. So in our case, we specify that Valerie is 28 and she's single. She lives in Salzburg and works as a junior marketing manager. And in her position, she earns 45,000 euros a year. We will also add a few psychographic details to our persona. Valerie is a spontaneous fashionista. She can easily be influenced by newest trends and sale campaigns, and buying clothes makes her feel good. But since she was brought up to be frugal, the bad conscience is not long in coming after buying an expensive piece. Next, you will add details regarding the user environment. So the user environment represents the physical, social, and technological context of the user. The purpose of this section is to answer such questions as what technological devices do users have access to? Do they spend most of their time in a corporate office or at home office? And how often do they collaborate with others? Our Valerie mostly uses mobile devices, namely her smartphone and iPad. She also has a laptop, which she mostly uses for work assignments or for watching Netflix. She's active social media user and spends most of her social media time on Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube. Overall, the demographic profile adds an additional layer of realism to your user persona and helps you to gain even more empathy for them. The next step is to add some information about the user's goals and frustrations. Frustrations or pain points describe the specific problems your users are experiencing, related to the area of interest, of course. The goal or the need is the motivating factor that inspires action and answers the question, what do users want or need to accomplish by using your product? End goals are the main driving forces of your users and determine what the persona wants or needs to fulfill. Our Valerie also has a few frustrations. She does not have enough space in her 2-room apartment for all her clothes. She has items in her closet that she never wears. She regrets having spent money and has bad consciousness about wasting resources. And she believes that one day she is going to wear all the stuff that she owns. She also has difficulties planning her budget and spends all of her savings. So our Valerie has a few goals. On the one side, she would like to appear fashionable, but at the same time restrict spontaneous buying and live more minimalistic. And she would like to buy more consciously. And the third goal she has is she would like to save a bit more of her money. The final step in creating a persona is to add an additional description. This description should provide facts relevant to the design issue. This description could be a day in the life narrative that describes how your persona interacts with the existing solution. It could also be a description of the pain points. This free-form description can also be a biographical description of your persona that tells a bit more about the circumstances your persona is facing and that impact persona's needs with regard to your product. Everything should be written from the persona's perspective, so that the particular situation becomes more vivid. In our case, we added a short description that highlights how Valerie sees her financial habits. I like to appear fashionable. To know about the latest trends, I follow several fashion bloggers on social media, and I'm often inspired by the outfits they put together. At least once a week, I browse through fashion shopping apps like Zalando, ASOS, Zara, and Mango on my smartphone. And unfortunately, I always end up ordering. I have to admit that there are some items in my closet that I have only worn once or not at all, yet I do not feel ready to give them away. If I am honest, I know that I don't like to wear them, but throwing them away after having paid so much money makes me feel bad. I love to go out for shopping with my girls, so I rarely manage to save anything at the end of the month. It is not that I do not want to buy cool clothes anymore, but I have a good job now. I should really be able to put at least a bit on the side. If you're not a design pro, feel free to use nicely designed free persona templates and add your information to them. So, once you have your persona, you have to figure out how to share this with all the relevant project members. In most cases, it is a 1 to 2 page document that is shared with everyone working on a specific product or service offering. Some companies go as far as printing t-shirts with basic information or putting cardboard personas in the office so that everyone can see them and always remember for whom they are designing their products and services.